It is Christmas Eve, Gonzaga fans, and we are celebrating by comparing our Zags to beloved Christmas characters. Who plays the Grinch? Who plays Rudolph? That and more coming up here on today's show.
You are Locked On Zags, your daily podcast on the Gonzaga Bulldogs. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is going on, y'all? Happy Christmas Eve and welcome into the Locked On Zags podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I am your host and longtime Gonzaga podcaster, Andy Patton, here to bring you news and updates on all things Zag athletics. Today's episode of Locked On Zags is brought to you by FanDuel. Folks, you can start the NFL playoffs with a big return from FanDuel. New customers can place a $5 bet, and if you win, you will get started with $250 in bonus bets. Just visit FanDuel.com today to get started. Well, it is Christmas Eve here for those of you listening to the show on Tuesday. We're still cranking out content here on Locked On Zags. We will have an episode on Christmas Day as well. We'll take the following day off, and then we'll be back with y'all on Friday, getting you ready for that big-time matchup on Saturday against Mick Cronin and the UCLA Bruins. Went around a handful of different ideas today, but wanted to keep it festive, wanted to keep it fun. We had some mailbag questions, and if they're still relevant for next week, we'll get to them or we'll get to some new questions, but kind of wanted to have a little fun this week. It's been a bit of a rough month for the Zags, even with two 20-plus point victories last week. I know there's some consternation around the team and the transfers and some of that stuff, but we just wanted to kind of have it a little lighter today as we're celebrating the holiday season here on Locked On Zags. I will dig out my Gonzaga Christmas hat for tomorrow's episode. Did not have it for today, but we'll have that one for those of you watching on YouTube. Be a little bit more festive for that show. Today's show, though, pretty simple. We're talking about the four front court bigs in the first segment. We're talking about the four guards in the second segment. We're talking about the three just outside the rotation guys, as well as Mark Few to close out the show. And we're just comparing them to a beloved Christmas character, whether from a TV show, a movie, a song, whatever it may be. Thought this would be a little bit fun. It's kind of a similar theme to a mailbag questions that I've gotten in the past of comparing Zags to Marvel characters or Star Wars characters or something of that nature. Thought it'd be fun to spruce it up a little bit for the holiday season. So let's get right into it. We'll start with Graham Ike. Graham Ike is, drumroll, the Grinch. Here's why. Regardless of his intention, Graham Ike strikes fear in those around him. Whether Graham Ike is playing well, whether he is playing poorly, the opponents, he's the first person on their list. He's the first person they're talking about. He's the person that they are most afraid is going to defeat them. With the Grinch and with Graham Ike, you can't really tell what he's going to bring day in and day out. Sometimes the Grinch shows up and he ruins Christmas. Sometimes the Grinch shows up and he makes everybody happy. He carves the roast beast, whatever it may be. That's kind of what we've seen with Graham. The other team's afraid of him every time. They're either double teaming him or they're paying a lot of attention to him. And yet sometimes he's delivering. Sometimes he's doing exactly what he needs to do, making Gonzaga's fan base very happy. Sometimes he's not doing that. And that's what we've seen. The last point for the Grinch is that he gets better around Christmas. So does Graham Ike. 2 years in a row now, we've seen him have very, very good performances in the last or second to last week of December. We'll see if he can bring it down against UCLA on Saturday, go into conference play on a high note, just like he did last year. Next up, Graham Ike's backup, Braden Huff, since we're sticking with kind of villainous Christmas characters. We'll go with Krampus for Braden Huff. A very intimidating and scary presence that feasts on children is Krampus for Braden Huff. Until recently, until this year, really, a lot of his dominance was against mid-major programs. Don't really want to say that mid-major programs are the equivalent of children. That's not exactly fair, but you get the sentiment that Braden Huff has had a lot of his dominance in his 1.5 year playing career at Gonzaga against smaller opponents, against not as quality opponents. Now, again, that has changed with some good performances this year against some better teams. Consistency. Braden Huff is very consistent. Krampus is a consistent presence around Christmas time, according to lore. Strikes fear in his opponents, of course. That's always been a part of it. And then kind of waiting around the wings. Krampus was kind of hiding a little bit. He comes out once a year, scares everybody, then kind of retreats again. For Braden, he redshirted a year, was really kind of an unassuming presence in Gonzaga's plan and in their development until he exploded and had that dominant start to his career last year. Next up is Ben Gregg. Went with Bernard the Elf from the Santa Claus movies. I think definitely in the first movie. I'm not actually sure if he's in the other sequels there, but Bernard For those of you who don't remember the movie, he's the head elf. He's kind of the one who helps Santa figure out what he's doing with his new role as Santa. And I compared it to Ben Gregg because kind of just keeps everything running smoothly. Sometimes behind the scenes, not necessarily the most public figure, not necessarily the most, the top of the box score, the leading scorer, things of that nature, but gets it done. Diving on the floor for loose balls, doing the dirty work, getting the offensive rebounds, making defensive stops, things like that. Bernard, everything's going. Everything at the North Pole, everything in Santa's workshop is running smoothly because of Bernard. And he's not out there getting a bunch of credit for it. He's not out there making big headlines, but he's the one getting it done and helping things continue to run smoothly. Last up for the front court is Michael Ajayi. Michael Ajayi is Frosty, the Snowman. And it's kind of simple. It's a little sad, but it's kind of simple. Still waiting for him to come to life. That's been the case with Michael Ajayi this year. I know he's starting to really concern some folks. I remain optimistic about the fact that he will turn it around because he's too good of a basketball player to just not find that impact, find that role. But I think with Michael, he's still figuring out the offense. I think he's still just kind of figuring out what the ask is of him specifically. And again, you want to stick with the Frosty comparison, trying to kind of adjust to the new world around him. Everybody around Frosty knew how to be human, knew how to live in this world, and Frosty did not. Michael is surrounded by, with the exception of Caleb Battle, is surrounded by teammates who were all on this team last year, who've been in this system for at least 2 years, many of them more than that. And so he's just trying to find his way, what he needs to do, who he needs to be in this world of Gonzaga's offense, Gonzaga's system, similar to Frosty, who's trying to figure out who he is in a new world surrounded by people who are more familiar with their surroundings than he is. Well, now we're going to move on. We're going to take a look at Gonzaga's rotation guards. We're going to utilize Hickman's clutchness. We're going to talk about Dusty Stromer being from LA, what that means in terms of which characters we are comparing them to. We're going to talk about that coming up here in just a second. But first, folks, the NFL playoffs are almost here, and it's not too late to get in on the regular season action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Because right now, new customers can finish the season strong with $250 in bonus bets if your first win of $5 or more wins. FanDuel has so many ways for you to pick up a W. Right now, lines are not out for Gonzaga taking on UCLA at the Intuit Dome just yet. However, the Diamond Head Classic, is underway. I'm recording it right now, and the odds at FanDuel have Nebraska favored to win this event at -125. Oregon State is next at +130. Folks, I watched Oregon State take down a very good Charleston team. I kind of think Wayne Tinkle and the Beavers might be the team to beat at the Diamond Head Classic. Maybe worth tossing a little bit of money down. Not only is it a win for the WCC, a win for the West Coast, it could be a win for you. And if you win on a $5 bet as a first-time customer at FanDuel, that's $250 you earn in bonus bets. So just visit FanDuel.com to join today. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. All right, folks, segment 2, still Andy Patton, still Locked On Zags podcast. We're still having a little fun here in the holiday week, celebrating Christmas as this show is out here on Christmas Eve, comparing every Gonzaga player, at least 11 Gonzaga players, and Coach Mark Few to various Christmas characters, fictional characters, movie characters, characters from songs, whatever it may be. Just wanted to have a little fun here this week as we get prepared for that big time game coming up against the Bruins of UCLA on Saturday, the final non-conference game of the season before Gonzaga takes on Pepperdine early the following week, the last game of 2024, and then we get fully into conference play in 2025. We talked about the 4 bigs, Graham Ike, Braden Huff, Ben Gregg, and Michael Ajayi in the first segment here. We're going to talk about the 4 guards, Ryan Nembhard, Nolan, Hickman, Caleb Battle, and Dusty Stromer. We'll start with the point guard, Ryan Nembhard, who I compared to Kevin McAllister from Home Alone, because Kevin pretty clearly, based on how that first movie went, was the glue that holds the family together. Everything fell apart when Kevin wasn't with them, just like we're fortunate that hasn't been a situation, but Gonzaga would probably have a really hard time staying together if Ryan Nembhard were injured, out, just in foul trouble, whatever it is. But he is so consistently on the floor, consistently available to contribute to this team. And when he is left alone, what Ryan wants more than anything, same thing as Kevin. He wants connection. He wants to connect with his family, help keep everybody together, do that. When Ryan isn't given that, when his teammates are not helping him, when they leave him, when they abandon him the way they did to Kevin, Ryan is innovative. He is intelligent. He is able to do things on his own. The amount of times this year in the second half in particular, Ryan said, screw it, passing the ball's not working. I'm going to just go get my own buckets. I'm going to go get my own shot. I'm going to go help this team win directly. Instead of distributing the ball to help us get points, I'm just going to go score myself. That shows his ability to innovate, his ability to make adjustments, his ability to do something different because he is faced with a challenging situation. That is why there is the comparison between Ryan Nembhard, who is the most important member of the family, and Kevin McAllister, who has to be innovative and figure out how to survive on his own when not being helped by the people around him. Next up, we got Nolan Hickman. This is the first one I came up with. Felt like kind of an easy one for me. Nolan Hickman is Rudolph. Rudolph, the red-nosed reindeer. Nolan Hickman has been ostracized at times in the Gonzaga community. The fan base has not always held him in the highest regard. There has been concern about his role. He was asked to be a backup point guard or kind of a backup two guard as a freshman, and then a starting point guard as a sophomore, and then a starting two guard as a junior. He's kind of finally kept that same role this year. And the fact that he has been kind of drawn a lot of ire from the fan base for reasons in many ways outside of his control. We're not going to sit here and say that, oh, actually, Nolan Hickman as a sophomore was really good as a point guard and people didn't recognize it. No, he wasn't very good in that point guard role. And that's okay. That's okay, because the Zags made an adjustment and figured out, hey, there is something you can do to help us. Rudolph was ostracized. He looked different. He acted different. He couldn't join in the reindeer games. He couldn't be with the people around him because of that difference. But then Santa, and yes, Mark Few is Santa, we're going to get to that a little later in the show, recognized his ability, recognized that the thing about him that made him different, in this case, Nolan not actually being a pure point guard in the way that they wanted him to be, recognizing that he had another skill set, the three-point shooting, the clutchness, things like that, and utilizing him in that way was what helped, in the story, save Christmas. It's what helped Gonzaga find their way last year and find their way even the year before that, when they kind of went away from having Hickman run the point and let Salas do it, let Bolton do it, at times let Drew Timme do it. Beyond that, Rudolph was a clutch performer. In the fog, when they needed him, he needed to step up. That they would have been in trouble without Rudolph, and he stepped up and saved the day. Nolan Hickman is one of the clutchest players Gonzaga has ever had. And I truly believe that. And obviously that he's not number one. There are some very, very clutch players in Gonzaga basketball's history and some clutch shots. But when the Zags need a bucket, Nolan is there. And he is so consistent about knocking down an open three, going to the basket, getting what needs to be done at a clutch moment. Nolan Hickman is absolutely there for that. So to me, the comparison with Rudolph makes a ton of sense. You can see the similarities in their kind of how they've been treated by the fan base, and of course, how they're able to get it done when they're most counted on. Sticking with reindeer here for our next one, Caliph Battle struggled a little bit here, but went with All of the Other Reindeer. And folks, All of the Other Reindeer is my favorite Christmas movie. It came out 25 years ago. It is directed and created by the creator of The Simpsons, Matt Groening. It's a 45-minute movie, animated movie. It's not super popular, but I absolutely love it. We watch it every single year. It's been a tradition in my family for well over a decade. Based on a reindeer, Olive, or a dog, I should say, named Olive, who hears an announcement that says all of the other reindeer need to step up because Blitzen is hurt. And she interprets that as Olive, the other reindeer, as opposed to all of. It's obviously a joke about the song Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer. And so she goes and saves Christmas as a dog. Despite not being a reindeer, she goes out and helps save Christmas. Caliph Battle fully believes in himself as somebody who can save this team. And he should. It's not a knock on him whatsoever. But he is here to be somebody who leads this team. He was brought in to be this team's leading scorer. He believes in his ability to be that player. He was also kind of viewed as the missing piece. Olive was the missing piece. They needed one more reindeer to get them to do their Christmas trip on Christmas Eve. Caliph Battle was viewed as that missing piece. The Zags needed depth in the backcourt. They needed scoring. They needed somebody who could put some pressure on the rim, get to the free throw line. They'd already added Michael Ajayi, who kind of was expected to be that Anton Watson replacement. They kept their other 8 or their other 7 rotation players from the previous year. Caliph Battle was the missing piece, the final piece. And then lastly, he's still kind of figuring out his role. Again, if you've seen the movie, Olive spends time trying to figure out how to be a reindeer, how to help save Christmas, how to be in that role, because she's not that. She's a dog. And for Caliph Battle, he's still figuring out what that is. And I think to some extent, Mark Few is still figuring that out too. I mentioned this on Monday's episode. Gonzaga's zone offense does not really lend itself to somebody like Caleb Battle getting downhill and scoring at the rim and getting to the free throw line, which is what he's best at. You brought him in here to be your leading scorer, or at least among your leading scorers, and you're not utilizing him against defenses that you're probably going to continue to see more of. So to me, there's a conversation that needs to happen to figure out how to get Battle more involved in games where the defense is trying to take him out of it. And for this comparison, again, Olive needs to figure out how to be the most helpful contributor that she can be to help save Christmas, to help the team succeed. So I think there's a lot of kind of parallels there between Olive's journey in that movie and Caleb's journey so far in the first half of his final season of college basketball and his only season in Spokane with the Zags. Last but not least, Dusty Stromer, the one player coming off the bench out of this group of guards. Dusty Stromer is from the very famous Christmas movie. And yes, I will hear no debate. Die Hard is a Christmas movie. In my mind, Die Hard, any movie where the plot revolves around it being Christmas. You can't take Die Hard and have the same plot at a different time. It's involving a Christmas party. John McClane only is in town because it is a Christmas celebration. The entire heist and robbery attempt is happening because it is a Christmas event. Like everything revolves around Christmas. Die Hard's a Christmas movie. Done with that rant. Dusty Stromer is John McClane from LA. That's an easy one. Showed up, does the dirty work, helps save the day. John McClane is resourceful. He is a good communicator. He is communicating with help on the, down on the ground to help him make sure they take down the bad guys. He's innovative. He's resourceful. He stays calm. He stays cool. He stays collected. And when he's called upon, when it is his turn, he gets it done. Dusty wasn't always that way. He was a little bit, I think, on edge as a freshman. He played pretty poorly in Gonzaga's first few road games of his career, which isn't uncommon for freshmen. But this year, we have seen a player who is more confident, who is more cool and collected, who knows what's being asked of him. He knows when they're running a play to get him an open look from three. Dusty, if he's catching the ball right now, he's got his feet set already, and he is launching immediately. I love that about him. I love that he is finding that confidence to be more of a scorer in this system, in this offense. And I think the dirty work stuff too. John's out there hiding. He's out there crawling through the vents. He's out there doing that kind of stuff to help save the day. Dusty's diving on the floor for loose balls. He's a tenacious defender. He's a good communicator on defense. I see him pointing and directing a lot more than many other players on this roster, particularly players who are a year or 2 or 3 years older than him. So he's got this leadership quality. He's got this ability to do the dirty work, to be tenacious, to be physical. Again, he's from LA. Like, there's just a lot of parallels between who John McClane is and who Dusty Stromer is for this Gonzaga basketball team. Well, folks, Mark Few is, of course, Santa. Already teased that, but which Santa? There's a bunch of different versions of Santa out there. We're going to talk about the specific comparison we're making with him, as well as how we're going to compare the other 3 players on Gonzaga's roster, the other 3 scholarship players who are contributing to Gonzaga's roster this season. All that and more coming up here in just a second. But first, folks, the college basketball season is here, and there's nothing better than the atmosphere of a college hoops game. The anticipation of what's about to happen, the energy of the crowd, the unexpected coming to life, Zombie Nation blaring through the speakers, and more. And now Gametime has a new feature called Gametime Picks that makes getting tickets to see your favorite teams play live even easier. Gametime Picks filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste your time searching through thousands of different tickets. And it's not just for basketball. If you want to go to concerts, if you want to go to a comedy show, theater, and more. Whether it's Gametime's ticketing coverage, their lowest price guarantee, or the panoramic views from your seat in the app feature, Gametime has you covered. And folks, like we said, the 1 p.m. tip for Gonzaga versus UCLA at the Intuit Dome, if that makes it easier for you to get to the Dome and get to watch this game, go to Gametime right now, because they got tickets right now for $76 a piece on the terrace. It's a brand new facility, really fun place to see a game. They also have super deal right now on the baseline, $115. Last week they were $177. You can get 2 tickets for $115 each on the baseline. So folks, take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime Picks. Download the Gametime app now, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege, and you'll get $20 off your first purchase. Again, create an account, redeem code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off. Terms do apply. Download the Gametime app today. What time is it? Game time. All right, folks, segment 3, still Andy Patton, still Locked On Zags podcast. Thanks for hanging out with me here, having fun here on this Christmas Eve, doing a holiday-themed episode. Probably going to have 2 different holiday-themed episodes today for Christmas Day. We're going to do a show talking about kind of some potential Christmas gifts, things Santa could bring to this Gonzaga team to help them in the second half of the year. Then we're going to take the 26th off, and then we'll have an episode on Friday coming out to get you ready for that big-time game against Mick Cronin, Dominic Harris, and the UCLA Bruins on Saturday. 3 more players to talk about, players 9, 10, and 11 in Gonzaga's rotation. That would be Emmanuel Innocente, Jun Suo, and Ismaila Diani. And then we're going to close it out talking about Mark Few, Gonzaga's Santa Claus. Which specific Santa are we comparing him to? We'll start, though, with Emmanuel Innocente, who's the little drummer boy. I originally had him as all of the other reindeer, and I think that comparison worked, but I ended up moving that up to Caliph Battle. The little drummer boy works for me as well. The little drummer boy is a character who wasn't able to offer as much as the other people who showed up. And so for Innocente, that's kind of similar as the transfer portal. They add this really talented scorer in Caliph Battle. They add this really talented rebounder and scorer in Michael Ajayi. And then Innocente is kind of the third part of that transfer portal class. And he's not as good of a scorer. He's not as good of a rebounder. But what he does have is, again, like the little drummer boy, he offers this heart, this loyalty, this passion. He comes in and says, this is what I have to offer, plays his music, is passionate about it, is proud of it, is dedicated to what he's doing. And I think that does encapsulate a lot of what we have seen early from Emmanuel Innocente. He's not the scorer that Caliph Battle is. He's not the rebounder that Michael Ajayi is, although he is fine in both those categories. He's a decent passer. He's still got to work on the actual playmaking, but he wants to distribute the ball. You can tell he had big assist numbers as a freshman at Tarleton State. He likes passing. He likes getting players in position to score. He likes doing the dirty work. He likes playing good defense. And he's just this enthusiastic, dedicated, passionate player. He wants to be at Gonzaga. You can tell he could have gone somewhere else where he would have played more. There was rumblings that he might redshirt before Steele Venters' injury. So he was willing to come here even if there was no playing time available for him. And I think that passion and drive and dedication to Gonzaga is what has made him become a little bit of a fan favorite, even as he has played pretty little so far this season. So I think there's a lot of kind of fun parallels between him and the little drummer boy. Jun Suo is Jack Frost, mostly because I wanted to acknowledge the fact that Jack Frost showed up completely unexpectedly in the middle of winter. So did Jun Suo. Jun Suo a few years ago was just on the roster suddenly. In fact, the way that I found out was that a fan or a listener on social media tagged me and said, hey, there's a new player on the roster. And there's a picture at one of the games. It was the first game in January, I believe, 2 years ago. And yeah, there was just June in a uniform. It was like, oh, who's that? Like, what's going on? And of course, we found out eventually that he transferred from a university in Korea, came to Gonzaga. So he showed up completely unexpectedly to everybody's surprise. And then it's not really clear when he's going to be back. Jack Frost shows up. He's helping his boy, but is he going to be around forever? Is he going to melt? Is he going to disappear? For June, it's like, is he going to be a part of the rotation? Is he going to take that next leap and be a big-time player for Gonzaga? Is he going to continue to stay kind of on the periphery of being a contributor? Sometimes he has flashes where you're like, oh, yeah, this is the guy that we want. This is the guy that we need. Even just in his most recent game against Bucknell, he had 5 points in just 3 minutes. He hit a three-pointer. He looks very good in the small amounts of time that we get to see him. And I think if you've watched the Jack Frost movie with Michael Keaton in it, he has this very tight bond with his son in the small amounts of time that he gets to see him. So again, that's kind of where that parallel comes from there for Jun Suo and Jack Frost. Next up, one of the most popular Christmas movies, and we're not getting into it till the very end here, Ismaila Diani is Buddy the Elf. Part of it is because for the first 15, 20 minutes of the movie, Buddy the Elf is comically oversized. He is way bigger than everybody around him. Ismaila Diani is huge. For those of you who haven't been paying attention, when you see him on the sideline, when you see him standing, or if you're not on social media, go look at the team photo. Go look at Gonzaga's team photo for this year. I think part of it is a little bit just angles and things of that nature, but Ismaila Diani looks like he's 3 inches taller than Graham Ike and Braden Huff. And I don't think he actually is, but he is significantly bigger than them. He is a massive, massive man. And he is a little bit fish out of water. That's the whole plot of the movie Elf, is that Buddy is a fish out of water. He's unfamiliar with being in modern society. He's unfamiliar with being around humans. He's only been around elves. Diani, you can tell when he does play, he's raw. He has the skills. He has the passion to play basketball. He's very talented, but he's not really ready for Division I basketball yet. He's not ready to contribute at this level, but he is enthusiastic. By all accounts on social media, he is a favorite among his teammates, a favorite among fans. He's always smiling, always laughing, always enthusiastic and energetic. Very, very similar characteristics to Buddy. So I feel like the comic size for him compared to everybody around him, as well as that kind of jovial, good-natured, innocent personality, really seems to track well between Buddy and Deani here in his freshman season. And then, of course, last, but very certainly not least, Mark Few. There's a lot of different Santas we could have gone with. I ended up going with one of my favorite modern Christmas movies that I think more people should watch if they have not seen it. It's called Klaus. It is a Netflix movie. I think it's about 5 years old. It's an animated movie. It's kind of an origin story for Santa. I'm not going to give away any plot points, but Santa's a bit reclusive in that movie. That's the only plot point I'll give away. And I think that sort of serves Mark Few. He's this larger-than-life figure. He's revered in Spokane. He's revered in the college basketball spaces. I mean, he just got nominated to be on the ballot for the Hall of Fame in his first year of eligibility, and we're not at all surprised by that because that is how beloved and respected and just kind of iconic of a figure that he is. And in the movie Klaus, Santa's kind of hidden away. He's reclusive. He doesn't really like to talk to people. And then Mark Few is not, he's not out doing a bunch of podcasts in the summer like some other coaches are doing. He does media when he needs to, but he's not somebody he's not on social media. He's not super outspoken about stuff. And that's how he's always been. And that's how he's always operated. But he's generous. He's the leader. He is, again, revered and beloved. He shows up every winter. And I think another comparison here too, again, without trying to give away too much for the movie Klaus, but Klaus, the character, helped save a town that was kind of on the brink of destruction. Mark Few helped save a school that was on the brink of potentially no longer being Division I. And that's a part of the story that doesn't get talked about a ton, but and in part because an original run to the NCAA tournament with Dan Munson as the head coach kind of probably helped ensure that Gonzaga didn't drop down to D1. So you could pin some of that on Munson, I suppose, but Mark Few's success took this program from, again, the brink of potentially going down to the D3 level to one of the most iconic college basketball brands in the world, a program that is now going to move into the Pac-12 conference because of the strength of their men's basketball program. He took them from that edge and made them thrive. And that is really a parallel to what happens in the movie Klaus. And that combined with the kind of reclusive, I don't want a lot of credit personality that Mark Few has. Even his statement after getting on the Hall of Fame ballot is all about the coaches, the players, the other coaches, his family, the administration. Of course, he's going to deflect and thank everybody else for the accomplishments that, of course, they are responsible for as well, but that he had so much to do with. So I think the parallels between this version of Santa in the movie Klaus and Mark Few kind of struck me as the way that I wanted to go with comparing Mark Few to Santa, which felt like the obvious choice just based on his role with the program. But there was a lot of different versions of Santa in the media, so it's kind of fun to pick which one I thought fit the best here. It's going to wrap it up for me today here on the Locked On Zags podcast. Hope you had fun with this, folks. I did. It was fun to put this together, fun to talk about this. We'll have another kind of fun Christmas-themed episode to keep it a little lighter this week. No need to just kind of continue to rehash some struggles here in the month of December. We'll get you ready for that game against UCLA on Friday. And then right after that, we'll recap that game, plus get you ready for Pepperdine, which is the following Monday. And then we'll get into a rhythm as we get into the WCC and conference play for the rest of the season. Thanks again, folks. Have a fantastic holiday. And until next time, as always, go Zags.